It wasn't a sudden realization. It crept up on me over the years, like a slow-growing shadow, stretching further each day until it finally consumed all the light. My name is Clifton, and for the longest time I thought I had a good marriage. Maybe not the passionate, movie-like love story, but a solid partnership. My wife, Meredith, was never the overly affectionate type, but I chalked it up to personality. Some people just aren't into grand, romantic gestures. I didn't mind, or at least I told myself I didn't. Then, one evening, the truth hit me like a slap I never saw coming. It was a regular Wednesday night. I had just gotten home from work, exhausted but glad to be back. I stepped into the kitchen, expecting the usual routine. Meredith scrolling on her phone, half listening as I told her about my day, maybe some small talk over dinner. Instead, I walked in on a conversation she didn't mean for me to hear. She was on the phone, laughing. Not the polite chuckle she gave me when I made a joke, but a real, full-bellied laugh, the kind she hadn't shared with me in years. Then she said it. "No, it's perfect. He takes care of all the boring responsibilities, so I don't have to. I don't have to love him. I just have to play my part." I froze. The words settled into my chest like cement, heavy and suffocating. I wasn't her partner. I wasn't even her friend. I was a paycheck, a reliable system that kept her life running smoothly. Love? That was never part of the equation for her. I backed out of the kitchen before she could see me. My mind was racing, my heart pounding. Years of small dismissals, cold touches, and obligatory conversations suddenly made sense. I had been fooling myself. That night, I lay next to her in bed, staring at the ceiling while she slept soundly beside me, as if she hadn't just confirmed my worst fear. I wasn't her husband. I was just a responsibility. And for the first time, I asked myself, what happens when I stop playing that role? I didn't know it then, but I was about to find out. The morning after that conversation, I woke up before Meredith. I turned over and looked at her sleeping face, trying to understand the woman I had been sharing a bed with for years. Her expression was peaceful, unaware of the storm raging inside me. I had always thought she was simply reserved, not one for words of affection or grand gestures. But now I saw it differently. She wasn't reserved. She just didn't care. For years, I had filled in the gaps, making excuses for her lack of interest, convincing myself that love looked different for everyone. I had told myself that her distant nature was just a personality trait, that she showed love in her own quiet ways. But last night had shattered that illusion. Love was never part of the deal for her. She had built a life where I was nothing more than a necessity, like a mortgage payment or a steady job. I got up quietly and went about my morning routine, but something felt different. My movements were slower, more deliberate. It was like I was seeing my life from the outside, watching myself play a role I hadn't realized I'd been assigned. When Meredith finally woke up, she stretched, barely glancing at me before rolling out of bed. "Morning," she said flatly, already checking her phone. I usually responded with some small talk, asking how she slept or if she wanted coffee. Not today. I just nodded and went back to what I was doing. She didn't even notice. That day at work, I couldn't concentrate. The words she had spoken kept repeating in my head, echoing with every keystroke on my laptop. He takes care of all the boring responsibilities, so I don't have to. The weight of it pressed down on me until I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped out of the office, walked to a nearby cafe, and sat there staring at my untouched coffee. I had spent years giving her everything: security, stability, commitment. And she had been taking it all while giving nothing in return. Not love, not passion, not even genuine companionship. I thought back to the early years, trying to pinpoint when things had shifted. Had it always been like this and I had just been blind to it? Or had she changed somewhere along the way? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing. I was done playing my part. That evening, I didn't greet her with the usual warm smile when I got home. I didn't ask how her day was. I didn't remind her about the bills or the weekend plans. Instead, I just sat in silence, observing. Meredith didn't notice right away. She was too busy on her phone, flipping through whatever was more interesting than the man sitting across from her. But after a while, she glanced up, frowning slightly. "You okay?" she asked, sounding more annoyed than concerned. "I'm fine," I replied, my tone unreadable. She studied me for a moment, then shrugged and went back to her phone. That was it. No insistence, no further questions. I could have been crumbling, and she wouldn't have cared. That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to be her background character anymore. I was going to give her exactly what she wanted. Nothing more, nothing less. For years, I had been the provider, the problem solver, the one who kept everything running smoothly. But if that was all she saw me as, then that's all I would be. No more surprises, no more thoughtful gestures, no more making an effort when she couldn't be bothered. I would still handle my responsibilities, of course. I wasn't going to sink to her level, but I wouldn't do a single thing beyond that. I wanted to see how long it would take before she noticed, if she even noticed at all. I didn't go cold overnight. That would have been too obvious, too dramatic. Instead, I started withdrawing in small, deliberate ways. I still woke up at the usual time, still made my own coffee, still went through my routine as if nothing had changed. But there was a crucial difference. Everything I did was only for me. For years, I had been the one making 2 cups of coffee, one for me, one for her. I had never asked if she wanted it. I just knew she did. I knew exactly how much cream and sugar she liked. I knew that she preferred her coffee a little colder, so I always let her sit for a few minutes before handing it to her. It was second nature to me. But that morning, I only made one. I took my cup and sat down at the table, sipping slowly, watching her reaction. Meredith walked in, eyes still half closed, as she reached for the counter. Her hand hovered where her cup should have been, but when she saw nothing there, she frowned and turned to me. "You forgot my coffee," she said. It wasn't a question, just a statement, like she was reminding me of my job. I took another sip. "No, I didn't forget." She blinked at me. "Then where is it?" "I only made mine today." For a moment, she just stood there, like her brain was struggling to process what I had just said. Then she scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Well, that's petty." I didn't respond. I just looked at her, waiting to see if she would say anything else. But instead, she huffed and turned away, muttering something under her breath as she grabbed the coffee pot and poured her own. It was such a small thing, a missing cup of coffee, and yet it was the first crack in the perfect little system she had built for herself. That day, I continued the experiment. When I got home from work, I didn't ask how her day was. I didn't remind her about the groceries that needed to be picked up. I didn't plan dinner. Normally, I was the one who made sure the fridge was stocked, that the bills were paid on time, that everything in our life ran smoothly. But today, I did nothing beyond what directly affected me. I ate what was left in the fridge without a word. I watched TV without waiting for her to join me. I left the dishes in the sink. And sure enough, by the second day, Meredith started to notice. "Did you go grocery shopping?" she asked as she opened the fridge, frowning at the empty shelves. "Nope," I replied, not looking up from my laptop. Her brow furrowed. "You always go on Wednesdays." "I didn't feel like it," I said simply. She let out a frustrated sigh. "Well, what are we supposed to eat?" "I don't know. I figured you'd handle it," I said, finally glancing up at her. "You do eat too, don't you?" The way her lips pressed together told me she didn't like that response. She didn't argue, but she also didn't go grocery shopping herself. Instead, she ordered takeout, mumbling something about how she always had to fix everything. The irony almost made me laugh. For the next week, I continued like this. I still paid the bills. I wasn't going to ruin my credit over this. But I stopped handling all the little things that made her life easier. I didn't clean up after her. I didn't make her coffee. I didn't plan anything. I was polite but distant, fulfilling my role as the responsible one, but nothing more. And slowly Meredith started to get more and more irritated. It wasn't immediate, but I saw the cracks forming. At first, she just seemed mildly annoyed, like she thought I was being childish and would get over it. Then, after a few more days, she started making passive-aggressive comments. "Wow, must be nice to just do nothing all day." she muttered when she saw me relaxing on the couch. I raised an eyebrow. Nothing? I worked all day. You know what I mean, she snapped. You've just been acting so weird lately. Have I? I asked, tilting my head. Or am I just acting like you? That shut her up real quick. For the first time in years, I saw something flicker in her expression. Something close to uncertainty. Like she was realizing, just for a moment, that maybe things weren't as effortless as she had thought. But she still wasn't ready to admit it. Not yet. Instead, she tried to play it off, rolling her eyes and walking away. I let her, because I knew this was only the beginning. The silence between us stretched like a rubber band pulled too tight, ready to snap at any moment. Meredith was still trying to pretend nothing was wrong, but I could see the cracks forming in her carefully maintained facade. At first, she thought ignoring my shift would make it go away. She assumed I would slip back into my old habits. Making her coffee, keeping the household running, taking care of the things she never wanted to deal with. But she underestimated me. One night, about 2 weeks into my quiet withdrawal, I came home later than usual. Not on purpose. I had a meeting that ran over. But the moment I stepped through the door, I knew something was off. The apartment was dark except for a single lamp in the living room. Meredith was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, her phone in her lap. She looked up as I walked in, her expression unreadable. You didn't text me, she said flatly. I blinked. What? You're always home by 6:30. It's almost 8. I shrugged, setting my bag down. I had a late meeting. She stared at me for a moment, then scoffed. Nice of you to let me know. There was something almost accusing in her tone, as if I had broken some unwritten rule. That was rich, considering she had never cared about my schedule before. You never asked me to text you, I pointed out. That's not the point, Clifton, she snapped. You always let me know if you're late, right? I always do. But tell me, Meredith, when was the last time you let me know when you were going to be late? When was the last time you checked in with me? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She knew the answer. I walked past her, heading for the kitchen. I could feel her eyes on my back, burning with a mix of frustration and confusion. She wanted to be mad at me, but she couldn't quite figure out why. That was the thing. She had taken my reliability for granted for so long that now, when I wasn't bending over backward to keep her comfortable, she didn't know how to function. For the next few days, she tried new tactics. She got overly nice, like she thought she could smooth things over without actually addressing the issue. Hey, I picked up some of your favorite snacks from the store, she said one evening, placing a grocery bag on the counter like it was some kind of peace offering. Thanks, I said, not looking up from my laptop. She hesitated. I also made dinner. Thought we could eat together. I glanced at the clock. Normally, she never bothered making dinner unless it was for herself. This was new. I could have caved then, could have accepted the olive branch, but I wasn't looking for shallow attempts at making up for lost time. I wanted her to realize the why behind my change, not just try to patch the surface cracks. I already ate, I said simply. She stared at me. You ate? Yeah. Picked something up on the way home. There was a flicker of something in her expression. Annoyance? Disappointment. It was hard to tell. Right? She muttered, forcing a tight smile. Guess I should have asked. She expected me to let it go, to say, no, let's eat together. Or, I'll save it for tomorrow. But I didn't. I let her sit with that realization, and she hated it. The next morning, she didn't say a word to me. No snide comments, no forced attempts at kindness, just silence. By the time the weekend rolled around, I could tell she was reaching a breaking point. She wasn't used to this version of me, the version that didn't orbit around her needs. Saturday morning, I got up and went for a drive without saying a word. I didn't leave a note, didn't send a text, didn't ask if she wanted anything. I just left. When I got back later that afternoon, Meredith was standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, her face unreadable. Where were you? Her tone was casual, too casual. I shrugged, setting my keys down. Out. Out where? I glanced at her, raising an eyebrow. Why does it matter? She clenched her jaw. Because we're married, Clifton. You don't just disappear without telling me. I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. Wow, that's interesting. She narrowed her eyes. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said, meeting her gaze, that for years, I've been the one keeping you informed, the one making sure everything runs smoothly, the one checking in, and not once have you ever given me the same courtesy. But now, suddenly, it's a problem when I don't do it. Her face flushed. That's not fair. No, what's not fair, I said, my voice calm but firm, is that you only care now because it affects you. The second things stopped going your way, you suddenly realized something was wrong. But when I was the one carrying this marriage alone, where was your concern then? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She had no answer. I could see the wheels turning in her head. For the first time, she wasn't just brushing it off. She wasn't rolling her eyes or dismissing me. She was really thinking about it. And that was exactly what I wanted. The tension in our house had thickened to the point where it felt suffocating. Meredith had always been good at pretending, at living in a world where she dictated the terms of our relationship while I quietly accepted them. But now that illusion was crumbling, and she was scrambling to keep it together. At first, she tried to act like my change in behavior didn't affect her. She went about her usual routines, scrolling through her phone, going out with friends, and pretending everything was normal. But the cracks were showing. She lingered around me more than usual, watching, waiting for me to slip back into my old patterns. I never did. By the time the weekend rolled around, I noticed a shift. She wasn't just annoyed anymore. She was worried. I had been a constant in her life, the man who made things easy, who ensured everything ran smoothly. Now that I wasn't playing that role, she didn't know what to do with herself. That Saturday morning, I woke up early and decided to go for a drive just to clear my head. No note, no explanation, just like she had done to me so many times before. I knew she would notice, and I wanted her to. When I got back that afternoon, Meredith was waiting. She stood in the kitchen with her arms crossed, her jaw tight, her eyes scanning me as if searching for something. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice forcefully casual. I set my keys down and shrugged. "Out." She let out a breath, her fingers tapping against the counter. "Out where?" I turned to look at her fully, tilting my head slightly. "Since when do you care?" Her lips pressed together, her jaw twitching slightly. "Of course I care, Clifton. We're married. You don't just disappear without saying anything." I let out a quiet chuckle, shaking my head. "That's interesting." She frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said, meeting her gaze steadily, "that for years, I was the one keeping you updated, the one making sure you were taken care of, that you knew what was going on, and not once did you ever do the same for me. But now, suddenly, it's an issue." Her face flushed, a flicker of something, guilt, crossing her expression. But Meredith was too proud to back down. "That's not fair," she muttered. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "No, what's not fair is how you treated this marriage like a contract instead of a partnership. You were fine as long as I was playing my part, keeping things easy for you. But the second I stop," I gestured between us, "you suddenly realize something's wrong. You don't care about me, Meredith. You care about what I do for you." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She was stunned, and for the first time I saw it, the realization sinking in. She had never expected me to call her out on it. I could see the wheels turning in her head, the gears shifting. For the first time, she was being forced to think about it, to really think about what she had done, what she had taken for granted. But just as quickly as that vulnerability appeared, it was gone. Her walls slammed back up. She crossed her arms tighter, scoffing. "You're being dramatic. I do plenty for you, Clifton." I raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" She faltered just for a second. I keep this house together. You live in this house, Meredith. That's not a favor to me." She swallowed, her face hardening. "You know what? Forget it. If you want to act like this, fine. But don't blame me when you realize you're the one ruining things." And just like that, she stormed out, grabbing her keys and leaving the house. I stared at the door after it slammed shut. She was running. Running from the conversation, from the truth, from herself. But I wasn't done, not by a long shot. The moment the door slammed behind her, I exhaled and leaned against the counter. My hands rested on the cold surface, gripping the edge as I processed everything. Meredith was losing control, and she knew it. That's what this was really about. She had built a marriage where she called the shots without ever saying it outright, where she benefited from my presence without having to invest anything real in return. And now that I had stopped playing my part, she was floundering. I didn't text her to ask where she went. I didn't pace around the house waiting for her to come back. I knew exactly what she was doing. Trying to prove a point, trying to punish me with her absence. But I wasn't the same man I was a month ago. Instead of waiting around, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went out alone. I grabbed my keys, left the house, and just drove. No destination in mind, no reason other than the need to clear my head. I ended up at a small cafe on the other side of town, one I used to visit years ago, before my life became a series of checklists and obligations. I ordered a coffee and sat by the window, watching the world move outside. I didn't realize how much I had let myself shrink in this marriage until that moment. I used to do things for myself. I used to have hobbies, interests, moments of peace that were just mine. But over time, I had let myself become a tool, a provider, a problem solver, someone who existed to make things easier for someone else. No more. By the time I got home, it was past midnight. Meredith's car was already in the driveway, but the house was dark. I stepped inside quietly, locking the door behind me. As I walked past the living room, I noticed something strange. Meredith was curled up on the couch, her arms wrapped around a pillow, her phone sitting untouched on the coffee table. She wasn't asleep. She was waiting. I stood there for a moment watching her. She must have heard the door because she turned her head slightly, her expression unreadable in the dim light. "You didn't text me," she said, her voice quiet. "Neither did you." That was what I wanted to say, but I didn't. Instead, I just shrugged. "Didn't think you'd care." She let out a small, breathy laugh, shaking her head. "That's what this is about, huh? Trying to make me feel how you felt." I didn't answer right away. I just walked over to the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of water, taking my time. When I finally turned back to her, I leaned against the counter. Did it work? Her jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. She knew the answer. "Where did you go?" I asked, watching her reaction carefully. She blinked. "What?" I repeated myself, slow and deliberate. "Where did you go?" She hesitated. For the first time, she hesitated. In all our years together, Meredith had never felt the need to explain herself. She had never worried about my reactions, never thought twice about doing what she wanted. But now she knew she was being held to the same standard she had set for me. "Just out," she finally said. I nodded, taking a sip of water. "Right, just out." She shifted uncomfortably, sitting up straighter. "I don't see why it matters." "Neither do I said casually. "Which is why I didn't text you either." Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. She had nothing to stand on, no justification, no moral high ground. For the first time, she was on the other side, and she hated it. Meredith let out a frustrated breath, running a hand through her hair. "What are we even doing, Clifton? What is this?" I tilted my head slightly. This is exactly what you wanted, isn't it? A marriage without love, just responsibilities. I'm just giving you what you asked for." Her eyes darkened, and for a moment, I thought she was going to lash out. But instead, she just stood up, grabbing her phone off the table. "You're being ridiculous." And then she left the room. I let her go because for the first time in years, I was the one in control. The days that followed were a slow, unraveling game of tension and restraint. Meredith and I moved around each other like two strangers occupying the same space, neither of us willing to acknowledge the invisible wall growing between us. The difference now was that I wasn't trying to fix it. I wasn't reaching for her. I wasn't bending over backward to make her feel comfortable. I watched as she struggled to process this new version of me, The version that wasn't her safety net, her provider, her ever-reliable husband who cleaned up the messes she left behind. She thought she had me figured out, that I would always be predictable, but I was done playing that role. One evening, I walked into the house after work and immediately noticed something unusual. The dining table, which had been untouched for weeks, was set. Plates, glasses, even a candle flickering in the center. Meredith was standing in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove, her back turned to me. I knew exactly what this was. An offering, a carefully constructed act to pull me back in, to make me forget what had been said and done. She turned when she heard me, forcing a casual smile. I made dinner. I stood in the doorway watching her, waiting. A second passed, then another. Her smile faltered. You used to say you wished we ate together more, she added quickly, like she needed to justify herself. I tilted my head. Did I? She frowned, clearly not expecting that response. Yes, she said a little too firmly. You did. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Funny. I don't remember that ever mattering to you before. Her grip on the wooden spoon tightened, her jaw flexing. So what? You're just gonna punish me now? Ignore every attempt I make. I'm not punishing you, Meredith. I kept my voice calm, even. I'm just finally treating you the way you treated me. You wanted a marriage built on responsibilities, not love. I'm just fulfilling my end of that deal. The silence that followed was suffocating. I saw something flicker in her eyes, something I hadn't seen in years. Was it regret? Fear? Or was it just the realization that she was losing control? For the first time, Meredith wasn't calling the shots. For the first time, she was the one chasing me. She forced out a laugh, shaking her head. You're being ridiculous. Am I? I pushed off the counter, stepping toward the table. I ran my fingers along the edge of the plate she had set out for me. Or is it just that for the first time you're the one who feels uncertain? The one who doesn't know what's coming next? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I could see it, the way her mind was scrambling for a way to spin this, to put herself back in control of the narrative. But there was no going back. I pulled out the chair and sat down. But instead of picking up the fork, I just stared at her. All right, Meredith. Let's talk. She swallowed. Talk? Yes. I gestured toward the seat across from me. You suddenly care about dinners together, so let's do it. Let's talk. She hesitated, then slowly lowered herself into the chair. She looked unsure. Meredith never looked unsure. The silence stretched between us as I waited for her to speak first. When she finally did, her voice was quieter than usual. I don't know what you want me to say. I leaned forward slightly, my elbows resting on the table. I want you to tell me the truth, Meredith. When did you stop loving me? Her breath hitched. I had never asked her that before, never dared to say it out loud. She looked away, staring at the candle between us, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. Don't lie. She flinched at the sharpness in my tone. A long pause stretched between us, the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders. Finally, she exhaled, shaking her head. I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't sure if she was lying or if she really hadn't thought about it before. But it didn't matter because that answer told me everything I needed to know. I picked up my fork and started eating, breaking the silence with the quiet clinking of silverware against the plate. Meredith just sat there, staring at me. For the first time, she was the one waiting for me to speak. But I didn't because I was done saving her from the consequences of her own choices. Meredith sat there, motionless, watching me as I ate. For the first time in years, she was speechless. There were no deflections, no scoffs, no dismissive eye rolls. Just silence. And in that silence, I saw something shift. She wasn't just uncomfortable. She was afraid. Not of me, not of my words. She was afraid of what came next. I finished my meal slowly, deliberately, letting the silence stretch. When I set my fork down, I wiped my mouth with a napkin and leaned back in my chair. You know what I realized, Meredith? She swallowed, her hands tightening around her glass. What? I spent years thinking I had to earn love, I said, my voice calm but steady. That if I just provided enough, supported enough, gave enough, you'd eventually meet me halfway. That one day you'd wake up and choose me. I exhaled, shaking my head. But I see it now. You never intended to. You were always content letting me carry everything alone. Her eyes flickered with something. Shame? Regret? I wasn't sure. But it was too little, too late. Clifton, she started. But I held up a hand, stopping her. I'm not angry anymore, I said, and it was true. The bitterness that had sat in my chest for so long was gone, replaced by something lighter. I'm just done. Her breath caught. What do you mean? I stood up, pushing my chair back gently. I mean, I don't want this marriage anymore. She stared at me, like she hadn't fully processed the words. You don't. She let out a short, breathless laugh. You're just saying that because you're mad. I'm not mad. I met her gaze firmly. For the first time in a long time, I actually feel free. The color drained from her face. So that's it? You're just walking away. I nodded. Yeah. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She wasn't used to this, wasn't used to me making a decision without her approval, without trying to fix things. I wasn't leaving in anger. I wasn't storming out or making threats. I was simply done. And that scared her more than anything else. For years, I had been the foundation of this marriage, holding everything together. Now I was stepping away, and she was realizing, maybe for the first time, what that truly meant. I turned toward the hallway, ready to pack my bags. But then, for the first time in years, I hesitated. Not because I doubted my decision, but because I had one last thing to say. I looked back at her, at the woman I had once loved, and offered a small, tired smile. I hope you find what you're looking for, Meredith. I really do. And then I left the table, left the conversation, and soon enough I left her. 1 year later, the sun was setting as I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, a fresh breeze carrying the scent of spring through the air. I sipped my coffee, feeling lighter than I had in years. Leaving Meredith wasn't easy. The divorce was messy, as expected, but I had never second-guessed my decision. Because the moment I walked away, I realized something incredible. Life didn't feel so heavy anymore. I traveled. I reconnected with old friends. I found hobbies again, things that brought me joy beyond just being responsible. And most importantly, I learned how to live for myself. And then I met her. She wasn't like Meredith. She laughed easily, spoke with warmth, and actually listened when I talked. There were no expectations, no silent obligations, just two people enjoying each other's company. For the first time in my life, I was in a relationship that felt real. As I sat there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I thought back to the man I used to be. The one who thought love had to be earned, that marriage meant sacrificing yourself for someone who didn't value you in return. That man was gone, and in his place was someone free.